Hello there. Do you find it difficult to prepare well for your opponents and get an edge before the game even starts? I'm Grandmaster Max Illingworth, and in this video I will share with you how I prepare for an opponent with a hypothetical example using the great tools that the ChessBase software has to offer. Now, for this example, I've taken the hypothetical situation of having the black pieces against Felix Klein, who is a FIDE master from Germany that I once played in the Isle of Man tournament. In that game I was white, so I decided to do it completely fresh for this one. Now, you might be wondering, how did I get this screen in the first place, where you can see all of Felix's games all in chronological order here. Okay, you can't see all of them because my screen is covering it, but you get the basic idea. Well, what I do is I use a really nice feature on ChessBase that's called Prepare Against White or Prepare Against Black. And the way to access that is to open your reference database, that is your database with the most games, whether it's Mega Database or the Week in Chess, or maybe you have some other database you prefer to use, maybe for local games if you're playing some at your local chess club. And what you can do is you can then, once you're in that database, go to the Players tab and then find the player you're looking for. And if you right click, you'll see something that says Prepare Against White or Prepare Against Black from the drop down menu. And you can select that to see what it is that your opponent likes to play of their openings. I can see here that Felix is predominantly an e4 player. He had one game where he didn't play one e4 in fact, which is another reason actually why I picked Felix as a player, because if I pick someone who played a lot of different openings, it could be a little bit chaotic, whereas this will show quite clearly how the preparation can work with, say, if your opponent has a normal repertoire, which if you're playing at the amateur level is the most likely case. Then your opponent has one system they like to play against each opening. So let's start then, after this little introduction. Now you know how to get to here. So we see that he plays e4, and one thing I like to do to start is to try to figure out where my opponent is weaker. And some players like to play through lots and lots of the players' recent games to get a feel for their style. And if you have plenty of time, it's certainly a good idea. But because I was playing many tournaments in Australia with 2 games a day, or even 3 games a day, it meant it was not so easy to, let's say, do a very deep preparation. So I learned to make the most of the time that I had and be very efficient. If you look here, you can see that, well, okay, maybe you can't see it all, but what I see is that Felix had a recent loss with white against the French defense, and that he also, if we scroll down a bit, had some losses against e4, e5 in 2019, where it seemed he had some challenges in the Morphy line of the Roy Lopez that goes with e5, knight f3, knight c6, and now bishop b5, which has been his predominant move since 2006. And at the end, his a6 line, it's one where he had a few recent losses, so it's certainly something that I could explore then in the later in the preparation. But for now, I'm just thinking, well, what are the best options against this guy? I can see that while knight f6 is the main move, he did have 2 losses out of 2 games against knight g7, this delayed Cosio line. So again, it's something I can always check later. But if we go back to e4, well, I remember if I scroll down a bit, I can see that he also had some losses against a Sicilian. Like, he lost a game in the Night-Off last year, about a year ago. I also had a string of losses here against the Taimanov, and also again against the Night-Off. Another one in the French and another in the Morphy Lopez. So it seems that just scrolling down and seeing some games he lost, more lost in the Sicilian, that if I had only a very short time to prepare, I would only look at c5 and wouldn't bother looking at anything else, because c5 is my main move. But I could also consider looking at e6 as well as a possibility, since after I do have quite a broad opening repertoire. and maybe even possibly a Caro-Kann if I get time, or if I'm not happy with some other choices for some reason. So after c5, he is playing knight to f3 exclusively, and since I have a lot of experience with the knight off, and since he had a few recent losses there, feels like it's a logical place to start to see what his system is against a knight off Sicilian. I mean, he seems like one of these players who has a narrow repertoire, but that means also has a lot of experience in it and will know the lines to some level of depth. So okay, against a knight off, well, because he's from Germany, the German players tend to be quite well prepared, so it's true that I made Saleh not necessarily go for a theoretical battle, but the fact he's varied a bit against the knight off suggests to me that he's not really that comfortable against it, even though his score with bishop e3 and f3 is quite decent. So I can see he recently switched to f3 in the two most recent games. Or actually it's a double technically, so it's only one game there. So probably bishop e3 I'll make my main line. I don't think he'll play 6 bishop e2 or 6 bishop g5, since he only played it once and it was over a decade ago. But he did play h3 in a couple of games in 2017, 2018. I have a feeling he might have actually been inspired by my book actually. So I can see he played it in a somewhat similar way to what I recommended there actually. So in any case, after bishop e3, I mean e5 is the main move, and I can see he likes this quite positional approach with knight f3, but for some reason most of opponents played queen c7, whereas bishop e7 is sort of meant to be the main line. So this could be an area where I could potentially target him. Castles. And yeah, he only has one game with bishop e6 that was back in 2010. He won against a lower rated player. Well, the main move, I think historically, is meant to be knight to c6. And then, yeah, he played queen e2 in one game and beat a lower rated player. And he played rook e1 in a more recent game and lost to a somewhat higher rated player, where that guy played h6, but bishop e6 is a pretty obvious improvement for black, since bishop e6 and knight g5 is not really doing anything. And okay, if I wasn't sharing the screen with you, I would actually have the reference tab open as well, and I would, as in like the online database, which you can press with the spacebar. I can just show it to you quickly, just so you can see what it's like. And then I can sort of see what strong players have played recently and then make a decision based on that. Right, I can see white won a few recent games with knight d5, but I feel like black's position should be quite fine though, after bishop takes. Yeah, normally I have this a bit bigger so I can actually see what the moves are without having to drag. But yeah, I mean, something like this with b5. Feels like very typical sort of knight off position. You go knight b4 to attack this pawn, c4, takes. And yeah, here I think, well, I can see my opening book is recommending queen to a5 in this position, just going very directly for the d5 pawn. It's a move that might put him under a bit of pressure actually, so it could be an interesting choice, where normally they play bishop d2 in practice. And then I might just play queen b6 or queen c5. Thinking maybe queen c5 to keep the pressure on this pawn. And yeah, with this and takes, I feel like this is quite a nice choice against a lower rated player, or even in general. Because even though white does get quite a lot of compensation with the computer's knight h4, usually they play bishop g5. It seems like the sort of position where there's a lot of imbalance, where, I mean, black's up a pawn, but white has the bishop here and some activity. And I also know from playing Felix before that he often gets into time trouble and thinks a lot. So, on the one hand, it might make you think, well, let's go for something very sharp, but try to make him think a lot. But if he's thinking a lot anyway, then something a bit more positional might actually be a better choice against him. So, at this point, I think, well, I can look at the recent games for some ideas. And I'm thinking that maybe bishop e6, that MVL likes to, might be my choice here. because he hasn't faced it in a while. I think he might not remember the theory that well. And if he does play takes and knight a4 like he did in the previous game, well, I don't have to play knight fd7 as his opponent did, but maybe I could play knight g4 instead, which I think is the reason that the top players stopped playing this bishop e6 and knight a4 stuff. After queen d3, then I can just refresh my knowledge. Knight e3, queen e3, b5. It's all very forcing sequence. Rook a7, knight d5, rook b7. And I mean, if he plays knight e7 here, then I think that I can be quite happy in this sort of structure, where the Indian gives white a small edge, but black is very solid and can play on the queen side. Normally they play queen to d2 and say you can't take the knight because of queen d5. But then maybe I just play knight d7 and just say the position is simply equal after, say, bishop h4, just to get out of knight e7. But okay, admittedly I'm not 100% happy here either. I have a feeling that maybe we can make a better choice than the knight off against this guy. Especially since he also played f3 and h3, so it's quite a bit of ground to cover in this case. I mean, I guess in theory I could also play e3 and play these lines with f3 and going for b5 as such. So I guess that's also an option, but I feel like I can do better than play the knight off against this guy, is my feeling. Well, what other Sicilians are there? I mean, he scores the worst against knight c6 over a large sample size, but I recently had some really painful losses in this in some blitz games. I'm not sure if the wounds have completely healed, even though it's not really the fault of the opening why I lost. So I reckon I might go for e6 if I like what I see here. So after e6 he goes d4, takes, and let's see what his score is like in different lines. So he seems to score alright against the Taimanov and slightly worse against Khan's Sicilian. But I think after a6 he's playing bishop d3, which is a bit of an annoying move. So I think I'll go knight c6, knight c3, and well, let's see what he does against Taimanov. So he's going for English attack, very old school, with bishop e3, a6, and queen d2, knight f6, castles queenside. Okay, I had one game with f3, but it's going to transpose. And in this case, I think I would go for bishop e7, since I didn't really get to studying Pavlidis's bishop b4 move yet, whereas this line of bishop e7 and b5 is one I studied a lot in 2014, and I don't think the theory has changed all that much since then, actually. There have been some recent games, but nothing earth-shattering. I can see that he had 3 games of this in 2015, where he played king b1 in 2 games, and he played g4 in 1 game. In his most recent game, he lost against Lei Tingji. In that game, it just went knight d4, where I played queen d4. I think bishop d4 is slightly more critical, but anyway, bishop b7, he played g5, knight h5. It's all very standard moves, and the thing is, if he likes this kind of bishop e3 setup, I think the Taimanov is a little bit annoying for him in terms of trying to get a clear target to attack. And I think it's a sort of strategic battle where he would spend a lot of time thinking early and maybe get into time trouble and not have enough time for the key decisions later. So after queen d2, so I'm just following this game he played against Tingji. So b4, knight a4, she played d5. Might actually consider castles as well, just to maybe as a more precise move order, where I keep this d5 in reserve. After d5 he played bishop d3 in that game, and I guess then it could transpose if I would have played d5, but it's true bishop c6 is more annoying, just hitting this knight at a good moment, since knight really struggles to find a good square after knight b6 and rook b8 as such. I think if knight c4, just d5 looks pretty strong. Actually, it's even just winning the knight, so it's clear things didn't really go according to plan for white here. I mean, if b3 is played, then yeah, maybe I'll just go d5, and if bishop d3, I could see there's some correspondence games here where black was just doing fine, just a5, and I mean normally I would go deeper because I'm a bit obsessive when it comes to openings, but I feel like black should be okay. There are free draws in correspondence with rook hf1, and if he goes rook he1, which led to a win in some Indian game, I think g6 is a fine reply. Or actually, I'm not so sure about g6 now. Maybe I'll deviate from the Indian games with d takes c4. Just release the tension and just put all my pieces on good squares with rook d8. I mean, it's just a normal position, but there's a lot of tension. White's king is a little weakened with b3. So I feel a position such as after rook queen f2, let's say rook d1, rook d1. I'm deliberating between bishop a6 and bishop e4. Both moves are interesting, but I think I'm slightly more drawn to bishop e4 from a human perspective. And yeah, I think that's what I'll do. Just play this and maybe even just rook d8. Just saying that the trade of pieces in general is favourable for black because of the weak pawns on g5 and especially e4. Maybe even thinking queen c6 is an alternative, or even g6 is also possible. But I think that rook d8 we can say is the worst case equalising. If they go bishop h3, then I think just d5 is again fine. I mean, it's true I should check that this bishop g4 and bishop h5 is nothing too scary because my king is a bit weak. But I know from studying these positions before that it's very hard for white to actually get at the weakness because their centre is suddenly quite open. After knight c6, rook d8, and ed5, I guess it's important to remember that black has to move bishop c5, making sure that we can kind of hit this knight, and if we play out the forcing sequence, takes queen d4. It's a good thing I checked this, because here it's kind of important to know that we shouldn't take on d4, but instead just play queen b5. Then we'll take on d5 next move with the bishop, and feels like black should be okay, since white's king is also not completely safe in this position, and we can't really play queen h4 either, because the knight is still under fire. So I feel like it's a decent choice, and I mean, just because the position might be just equal at the end, it shouldn't put us off, because he still has to get there. So if he goes g4 instead of king b1, since he did play this twice, well, okay, I can go knight takes d4. And it's weird why the game's not showing on Mega Database. I think it might be a little bit of a glitch, is it? Because the move should be showing here in the reference tab, but for some strange reason they're not right now. But okay, after king b1, well, I would like to look at his games to see if he faced the main move of bishop b7. But yeah, since my computer of course had to come up with some frustrating glitch at the most inconvenient moment, I guess we'll just soldier on. Okay, there we go, he has faced it. So after g4, this is the move he played. There is an interesting piece sack with bishop f4, but I checked it recently and I know this is meant to be fine for black with careful play. Like, the key idea is that in this position it's kind of important to play queen to b8 at this point and not take and let him go ed5. I mean, it's an interesting position for sure, but I remember that the key is to put the queen on e5 at the right moment. This is a good time, and I mean, white has sufficient compensation, but I think after h5, which we played to stop queen ever coming to h6, I feel reasonably okay with this position. I can untangle with moves like rook c8 and maybe get some counterplay on the white king side later. So I feel like black should be doing fine here. So if he goes g4, then I'm curious if it's actually going to transpose to the other lines, because in his game he had knight d4, bishop d4, and for some reason his opponent played b4, which I think is not meant to be a good idea. I think, trying to remember exactly why it's a mistake. I thought there might have been some bishop e5 tactic, but it doesn't really work. Just knight a4, and yeah, then black is slightly regretting the move order. So I could always just revise castles, or revise my files, and know that black's position is just fine. But I'm even wondering whether I can try to be tricky with the move order and maybe even go b4 immediately as a bit of a surprise. Because if knight a4, then black can go for some g5, and I feel like this could lead to interesting play. Well, after g takes, knight h5. So if he goes e d5, then I can take, and if queen takes, so it's going to go bishop d5 and say that with black having the central majority of 1-0, that this should be fine for black. Maybe it's worth just thinking a little more to make sure I'm not missing something obvious. But since knight b6 is met with rook d8, and since queen b6 is met with bishop d6, just keeping the tension, feels like really black should be just strategically fine. So even b4 could be interesting as a way to, be a bit creative and go my own way. And also b4 as a novelty, seeing it's very unlikely that he would be ready for it. He might even have a long think here over whether to play knight a4 or knight e2. And if he does go knight e2, then yeah, I think just knight e5, and I can play moves like d5 castles, knight c4, say knight g3, and yeah, I'm even wondering if you can play d5 immediately in this position or not. Seems like a quite healthy idea. If I really want to avoid g5, also h6 might be a move as well, which maybe is even a bit more precise. But anyway, I feel that, in any case, after d5, black is doing absolutely fine. He's ready to meet g5, knight d7, f4, knight c4, like this sort of thing. So, I think this sort of position, this one actually I want to think about because, well, I want to make sure I actually take the right way. So yeah, dc4, and, well, c3 is coming, and even though the engine is giving a small edge for white at the moment, I can see that black one is scaling into a higher rated player. I think practically there are some decent chances, though, it may well be that perhaps just h6 is more solid. Objection is the way to go. But okay, I think that more or less makes my decision clear that, his line against Taimanov doesn't impress me that much. I think that even though his score is decent in practice, he won some high-level games, but his lines aren't that critical, and the fact he lost the two most recent games suggests to me that, this is a good way to proceed. And, basically, I didn't notice he scored badly against knight f6, the 4 knights, so that does prove a little bit tempting as well. But since I already worked quite a bit on the Taimanov and come up with a lot of ideas here, I think I'm going to stick to that choice for this game, and maybe if I played him another time, maybe the 4 knights could be my choice against him in the next one to surprise him a bit. And also his games in the 4 knights are all quite old, so it may not be the best indicator of, well, what might be the current situation of how comfortable he is. And I don't think he's really done any other lines than this, just a very narrow English attack approach. So he hasn't ever played knight b5 at this point, and he hasn't really ever played an anti-Sicilian either against the e6 Sicilians. I can just wait a second, let this load to make sure. So yeah, I think then my preparation's pretty much done, that I'll play the Taimanov Sicilian against him. And, I'll just revise these lines a bit. Might go in a little more detail if I have time. Or maybe I can just sort of relax and conserve my energy. Just go for a walk, have some really healthy food like some meat or fish and vegetables before the game. And just make sure, that I keep my high energy level and that good feeling at which I play my best chess. So that's how I prepare for an opponent. I hope you found this really useful, and showing how you can also prepare for your games like a Grandmaster. If you love this video, then please leave a like, and certainly you can subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with more of my content and know of my videos as they are released. And also I have a little offer as well in the description if you want more video content like this that is not available on my YouTube. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.